And then another thing is, like, if I weren't here, like if I were, like, let's say I was here by myself and I was filming this, I'm pretty sure any one of these guys would walk up to me, start quoting statues, start talking about why I can't film.
Right, yeah.
The fact that there's so many people here, they're not going to try to pull some shit, you know?
Well, I mean, that's what they did to, old boy over there across the street.
I saw some living in this community.
Having a badge does not grant you extra rights. Having a badge does not grant you extra rights. We are standing here today, united as one, against your tyranny. We will no longer stand for this.
Now, most of you probably know that the Guardian newspaper, a newspaper nearly 4,000 miles away from Chicago, scooped the local Chicago press. And in response to that scoop, some of them have done the churlish matter of deciding to basically take the CPD's line about what's happening in this building behind us here, hook, line, and sinker. People need to know that there are a few details that neither the Guardian, let alone the Chicago press, has made mention of to this point. One big one is that less than 2 years ago, in a case called Dunn versus the City of Chicago, the Chicago Police Department and City of Chicago paid out $16.5 million in a class action precisely designed to stop the sort of practices that have been reported in the building behind us here. Things like handcuffing defendants to the walls of interrogation rooms for hours on end. Things like not charging them for many, many hours and denying them access to their attorneys. Things like not allowing them access to toilet facilities and food. Those were the kind of conditions that the City of Chicago paid out $16.5 million less than 2 years ago, practices that were and probably still are common in regular Chicago police lockups. So excuse us when we get a little upset when we find out that there's an off-the-books site which isn't even subject to the kind of monitoring that we saw in the case of the Dunn versus City of Chicago class action lawsuit. Excuse us if we're a little bit upset for a city that just paid out $16.5 million in that one suit, and last year paid out over $50 million for police misconduct in a city that's swimming in red ink. Excuse us if we're a little bit upset, not just about that money, but the continuing pattern of police misconduct and, yes, brutality that we have seen with the deaths of young black men in our city over the last several months. Rahm Emanuel says, trust us. We're doing the right thing. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but you've lied to us about enough other things that we're not going to just take your word for it, that things are just fine and hunky-dory in the building behind us here, especially when we've had witness after witness. And we'll be reading out a statement from one of them, Brian Church, one of the NATO 3 defendants, a little bit later, who can tell you firsthand about what's happening in this building behind us here. We live in a city, and yes, a country, that is swimming in a problem of police brutality, particularly directed against young black men, young Latino men, and other people of color. We live in a city that we know we should trust the police department when it says it's dealt with its police brutality problem, because over and over again we find that they have lied, and they keep on lying, and it keeps on costing our city millions of dollars, not to mention the broken lives. So, Mr. Mayor, we demand an immediate, impartial investigation of Homan Square. We demand that you shut down this facility, at least so far as taking any accused people here. There are plenty of police lockups better monitored than this one around the city. And by the way, you need to step up the monitoring of those police stations, because what we've heard through the grapevine in articles such as in the Tribune, his attorneys are saying the kind of practices that have been reported about Homan Square are routine. Attorneys being denied access to their clients. People being denied phone calls to their loved ones and attorneys and so forth.
I am David Rodriguez, and I represent Anonymous. When we found out about this story, we had to jump on it as soon as possible. Now, I was doubtful of any story that I read on the internet. You know, that's common sense. So I, of course, was skeptical about the Guardian's article. And I was looking forward to seeing Chicago Police Department's response. And when I read it, it was very bland. And, you know, their main point was on the use of the Guardian's word of black site. And they said that because the public has access to this building to reattain their confiscated items, that it's not a black site because it's a public building. The public is allowed. That is not true. The definition of a black site is basically where dark black ops are created away from public eye in a government building. That's what it is. It doesn't matter if we have access to this building or not. The point is that there are black, off-the-books records going on in there. And we want to find out if that's true. That's what we're here for, to investigate. Anonymous has always been about transparency. That's our main goal, and that's what we're seeking here now here in Chicago. CPD, the world is watching you. The country is watching you.
True.
You should have expected us.
Amen.
Many more things are becoming clear in the last few months. One, the police systematically kill black and brown people and get away with it. Two, they attack protesters who demand the end to it. Three, we're still here. There's very important, Guantanamo to Chicago to Abu Ghraib to Romania to the 80,000 people who were held in solitary confinement in U.S. prisons in violation of international standards of torture. Another thing is very clear. This system tortures and brutalizes people around the world, here and overseas. These are not bad apples. You know, you read that story about Richard Zuley. Chicago cop goes and becomes a major Guantanamo torturer. One of the underlying questions that needs to be figured out is who's paying for what and how many connections are there between CPD, Homeland Security, CIA, FBI, and everybody else.
Yeah.
These are not bad apples. This is a hemlock tree. It's poison.
Yeah.
These are crimes against humanity, and they must stop.
Yeah.
As long as this system is in power, the world will be a horror. And it doesn't need to be that way. I also support the Revolutionary Communist Party USA, and I encourage people to check out its plan and vision for how do we get to a radically different and better world.
Excuse me. Sorry.
It's also true, this system has been hit very hard by the powerful demonstrations last fall and now, and they've hit back with repression. There's a flyer going around here right now, going back to CPD for a minute, about Darius Pinex, killed by Chicago cop Gildardo Sierra in 2011. Sierra shot 2 more people within 6 months, killing the second one, Flint Farmer, by shooting him in the back when he was lying on the ground. And this was caught on a police video cam. So where would we expect to see Officer Sierra? In prison, since it was on video cam? No, he's working for the 311 Center, making roughly $70K a year. This is absolutely outrageous. It has to stop. Our movement is also at a crossroads. the repression that's come down and the repression that this represents needs to be opposed, and people need to get back out in the streets, moving forward on the offensive and bringing more massive waves of struggle for the people and against police murder, against police brutality, against the terror that this system brings on people around the world. And I would encourage people to also check out April 14th. Stop Mass Incarceration Network has called for stop business as usual across the country. The business as usual of this country is terror and murder, and it must stop. This and many more demonstrations and protests need to be building up to a very powerful April 14th. Thank you.
Now, one of the reasons that I felt strongly about this is that with all of the news coming out with the Senate intelligence report on torture and the tendency that we've started to have toward cruelty in this nation, as opposed to understanding the profundity of the human experience and striving toward unity, you tend to have a feeling of being downtrodden, like it's too big to resist. And unfortunately, that's the way that history's gone through many power struggles. I'd like to read off a quote from Martin Niemöller, and it goes, "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." And one of the issues, the main issue behind this, is that when individuals are empowered by a contract and have no threat of accountability, they can't be expected to exercise self-restraint. And everything that happens inside of this facility is off the books. So they can't prove that they're not practicing the activities that have been alleged inside of this facility. And their hands are clean. They can deny it, and then it's just a battle of confidence between the people who have witnessed it and those who are protecting it. So our objective here is to get hard evidence, because the burden of proof now lies on the Chicago Police Department. So we have a statement here from Brian Church. He unfortunately could not be here because of the conditions of his house arrest. However, he wanted this message to be portrayed here. "Friends and comrades, today you stand as a light shining on a particular darkness in our very own backyard. Today you stand because basic humanity has been disregarded in the grossest fashion. We hear about things like this happening in other countries, whether perpetuated by their government or forced upon them by ours, but we never expect this to hit so close to home. I've experienced only a small fraction of what occurs behind these closed doors. But the things that happen cannot be allowed to continue. For the sake of even the smallest amount of basic humanity, we the people of this nation declare this facility and all others like it to be non-conducive to living life in a way that promotes peace, freedom, and dignity as a human being. So now, we are here to evict the occupants and shut down Homan Square black site. We will continue to be here until we are finally recognized as human beings. By allowing this facility to remain active puts our whole nation, no matter what age, race, religion, politics, or gender, at risk, or gender identity, at risk of fascist oppression, taking a more sinister step forward. So I say to you, march, my comrades, and let these people know that you're not happy, and you're not going to stop until the job is finished. March for those who cannot, for those who are too afraid, for those who are still locked up, and for those who have lost their lives at the hands of the state-sponsored killers. March for your family and your friends. And march, because if you don't stand up, they will never take the boot off your necks. Stay safe, my friends. Much love and solidarity, Brian Jacob Church.
I stand with you wholeheartedly to call for an investigation to the lives that have been tortured by this facility. We hear a lot what goes on in our neighborhood, and in some cases we've stopped marching. We stopped fighting for those that matter. And I'm an alderman that stands for the people that have been forgotten about. It's easy to go in the boardroom to conduct business, but it's hard to be out on the street and fight for the common folk that we forget about, but they make up the majority of this population. In the 24th Ward, 80 to 90% of the African American men have X's on their background, and they deserve not just a second chance, but another chance, and it's up to us to make sure that they have it. I'm just letting you know I'm with you. I stand with you. I stand for the investigation. I don't know how many other political officials are aware of this, but I would definitely contact them to make sure that we wrap our hands around you and make sure that this does not go uncontested or not brought to the forefront of the American people. Thank you so much.
Because individual rights have been violated. If the Chicago Police Department hasn't gotten anything to hide, then open up the doors. Open them up. Open up the doors. We thought that the red squads were eliminated 15 and 20 years ago. But I guess we didn't get the memo. If anybody did, raise your hand right now. I don't see any hands. Anytime that we see unjust laws, anytime that we see people's rights being violated, we will fight those unjust laws. I stand with Travis, I stand with Chicago Anonymous, and I stand with everyone who stands against unjust laws and the rights of the people. We have got to band together. Special interests don't represent the community. And anytime you see someone's rights being violated, then we'll continue to be out here. I'm hoping that you'll be back again next week, tomorrow. As long as it takes, we will shut this down if we have to. Because what do we need? We need freedom first.
Over the past 4 years, there have been over 300 Chicago police shootings. Over 90 of them have been fatal. Anita Alvarez or Rami Manuel has not fired an officer. They have not got an indictment for any officer or anything of that.